Alright guys, welcome back to the first video for a while. I've not done anything interesting recently, so hasn't been anything to make videos on. Same old story. But I did something recently that was quite interesting, which was buy this car. And I did get rid of the Cayman. I mean, get rid is maybe a harsh term, but I sold the Cayman to fund this. And this is an Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio. There we go, get it right. Embarrassing, don't even know what car I bought. And yeah, this is just going to be a quick first impressions video. I'm going to do some separate videos instead of just making this really long and rambly and going through all sorts of different things. I'll do separate videos on like having a look around underneath of the car and my plans for things I'm going to modify on it. How well it does burnouts, because that is a very important question. And some other bits and bobs like future plans and all that stuff. But for now, let's just talk about first impressions and also why I sold the Cayman. Because the Cayman was actually probably the best car I've ever owned. So it's kind of weird that I sold it within like less than a year of owning it. But yes, we'll get onto all that stuff as well. First of all, let's take a good look around the exterior of this car and some of the interior bits as well. And then we'll kind of jump back in and talk about all that fun stuff. So here we are on the outside. Let's take a quick look around it. I think it's a really nice looking car. Obviously subjective, but yeah, especially this colour. Took me quite a while to find one of this colour and with the yellow calipers, which apparently they don't do anymore, the yellow calipers. They're stopping that at the end of this year, but I think it looks really nice with this colour. But yeah, 4 doors obviously, comfortably sits 5 people in there. We've got 4 exhausts as well. I'm probably going to make my own exhaust system for it, but yeah, 4 exhaust tips. And there's a diffuser, which you can't really see there, but I'll show you that properly in another video when we get it up on the lift and have a look. But yeah, in terms of interior, the back is surprisingly spacious and plush. It's even got aircon and USB chargers and heated seats for the back. And also, yeah, all the trim and stuff on here is very nice as well. And then in the front, we are also looking very plush, very nice. Got these massive column mounted paddles, which I'll touch on in a minute. Seats are pretty nice, although the headrests stick really far forward. You can see that. Like, I hit my head on these headrests more than I ever have in any other car. But yeah, the doors are all pretty much the same as before. With the 2021 model, they did update this stuff. Like, this used to be plastic, now it's carbon fibre. Just looks a little bit nicer. And you've got like wireless phone charger in there, and there's like a USB port at the front, the heating controls and all that stuff. All the normal boring stuff. The dash is covered in leather, stitched, which looks pretty nice. And yeah, steering wheel's pretty hype as well. Bit of carbon fibre start-stop button on the wheel, which is a nice touch. And then the gear stick, which I think this is really nice. It's the ZF8 gearbox, same as a load of other cars, but they've actually covered it in leather for once. So it looks a lot nicer than in most of BMWs and stuff. And this is how you switch all the different driving modes. And that's the bumpy suspension mode button in the middle. And then that's just all the volume controls for the multimedia stuff. All the aircon controls are there. It's got heated steering wheel as well, which is nice. Never had that before. I don't know if you can really see the button, but yeah, heated steering wheel. Very nice feature. And then yeah, auto wipers and all that jazz. And it's got an analog and a digital speedo. You can't see the digital one at the moment, obviously, but we'll fire it up in a minute, you'll see. But before I forget, there was one other thing I wanted to show you on the front, which is this nice little carbon fibre splitter, which I didn't realise was a factory option. Like, I've got a friend who's got one of these cars, and I thought his was aftermarket, but turns out it's factory. Also, apparently it moves. I guess at a certain speed it drops down for better downforce, but yeah, apparently it's actually got some kind of motor in it that moves it down. I've never seen that happen. Obviously, when you're driving, you can't see it, but yeah, that is a thing that happens. And one other last thing as well before we go for a drive, just pop the bonnet, carbon fibre bonnet, actually full carbon fibre, and you can see a little bit of it through the windscreen as well, which is nice. And then yeah, just the world's most crowded engine bay, like most modern cars, I guess. One thing I did find interesting as well is the way the air actually flows into the engine. It's because, like, I was looking at this trying to figure out exactly how everything's actually working it, because you've got so many air intakes, it doesn't really make sense. Obviously it's turbo, so you've got one going to the turbo, then to the intercooler, and then to the engine. But then why have we got 3 sets of intakes here? We've got these ones, and these ones. So what actually happens is air comes in through here, through this section, up both sides of this, obviously up here as well, into there where the air filter is. Then it splits off and goes down each side into the turbo, goes through the turbo, gets heated up, obviously, goes through the intercoolers, which are right down in there, you're not going to be able to see them. Then comes out the intercoolers into here and into the engine, obviously same for both sides. So yeah, it's kind of weird that like they've got all this just to go to the air filters. Like, for me, it would have made a lot more sense to just have an air filter down there that goes straight into the turbo. But I'm sure there's a reason they've done it. But that is how it is. But yeah, overall, there's just not a lot of room in here. Like, I was wanting to make a strut brace for it like I did with the Supra, but there's just not a lot of room around that strut top, is there, to build anything off. A lot of stuff in the way, and then also it might hit the vents from the bonnet, so I don't know. But anyway, with all that said, let's go for a drive. I guess I'll show you how the stock exhaust sounds as well while we're here. But it's nothing to write home about because it's a stock exhaust. What do you expect? We'll put it in race mode, because that opens the valves. So if you can hear, that instantly gets louder. It also weirdly means that you can't see the temperature. Like, if I close this, so all you get is just the speed when you're in race mode, and the fuel, how much fuel you got left. But if we put it in any of the other modes, you can see like the time and the temperature. But apparently in race mode, you're not allowed to know those things. All you care about is speed. And yeah, the bumpy road mode thing, very useful. I have it on pretty much all the time because these roads are very bumpy around near me. And to put it in neutral, you can't seem to actually like select neutral. Like, obviously that's reverse, that's drive. There's no way to get it into neutral on here. So what you have to do is pull both paddles at the same time. You have to put the camera down to do this. But yeah, so now it's in neutral. Now you can actually rev it. It's got quite a sort of weird, like, muffled sound. I'm definitely going to make my own exhaust system for it. But yeah, I'll turn the microphone around and you'll be able to hear it. So there you go, that's what she sounds like stock. Like I say, I'm definitely going to make my own exhaust system for it. I will probably sell that as well, because I may as well if I'm going to the trouble of making it. But yeah, let's hop in, go for a spin. Alright, so I guess we should start with the Cayman and why I sold that and why I got this instead. Now, even though this has replaced the Cayman physically, it's not really replaced the Cayman in terms of, like, in my car lineup. I was going to say that sounds a bit cringe because I've only got like 2 cars, well 3 cars, but yeah, the 370 is obviously a drift car, the Range Rover is like my big practical towing thing, and then this is my daily. So the Cayman was my fun car, but also ended up being my daily because driving a Range Rover is not much fun, so I would just drive the Cayman all the time, but it felt way too like special and I don't want to say hardcore because it's not that hardcore, like it's still got aircon and comfort and all that stuff, but like it was just a bit too special and a bit too sporty to be driving to Tesco all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just felt wrong using it for that. And I didn't really do it. I did 1 track day in it, and I don't really want to do loads more. No, I did 1.5 track days, sorry. But I didn't really have much interest in doing more track days, so it felt like a bit of a waste. It's such a good car, such a special car. It just seemed like a waste the way I was using it, and I felt bad using it like that. And also, it's not very tail happy. Like, it's designed to grip and that's it. And I knew that going into it. I didn't buy it thinking it would be a drift car, but I thought I'd be able to have a bit of fun in it. Turns out you can't really. Like, it just wants to grip. That's all it's designed to do. It won't do burnouts. It can do drifts in the wet if you clutch kick it, but it's just not good at any of that stuff. So yeah, that's another reason. Like, I wanted something that was a bit more of a hooligan, do you know what I mean? And this seemed to tick all the boxes because this rear-wheel drive, unfortunately automatic only, but we'll get onto why that was okay for me in this instance. Rear-wheel drive, 500 horsepower, lots of torque because twin turbo. And I thought, yeah, this will be a good laugh. So to cut a long story short, the long-term plan is to have this as my daily that is also pretty fun as well. It's a nice, fast, fun daily. And then also have another fun car that I modify a lot. I'm looking at the new Z, the new 370Z replacement, which they just call in the Z, which is dumb, but that's what they're calling it. Or the other option is a BMW M2. I keep to and froing. I need to test drive one of those. I've been meaning to test drive one for years now. But yeah, that's the plan. Get another car that will be more fun and more kind of sports focused. Because this, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, but this, just like the M3 and M4, they're not sports cars to me, okay? It's a comfortable, practical, like you comfortably fit 5 adults in here, got all the mod cons, it's comfortable, it's practical, it's big, and it also happens to go pretty damn fast. But that doesn't equal a sports car to me. Like, and I know people seem to disagree, but that's my opinion on it. So yeah, this is a nice fun daily, but I also want a fun sports car as well, if that makes sense. So with all that said, let's talk about some first impressions of this car and how it compares to the F82 M4 that I had, because that's definitely the closest thing I've ever owned that I can compare it to. So first impressions, good and bad, because there is one bad thing about this car that stands out quite a lot, and it's the brakes, but we'll get onto that. To start with the good things, it's fast. It's really fucking fast, and that's coming from someone who had a 700 horsepower supercharged R8. Obviously this isn't as fast as that, but it's been a few years since I owned that, and this honestly like blew me away in a similar way to when I first drove that. Like I drove it, actually it was down this road, down this very road. The first time I really floored it in like second, third, fourth, I actually said out loud like, holy shit, this is fast. Like now it may just be because I've got used to having the GT4 that didn't have a lot of torque. Like it's 400 horsepower and this is 500 horsepower, you think there's not that much of a difference, but it's mainly the torque, to be honest. Like the GT4, you had to rev the nuts off it to go fast. This does pull all the way to the red line, which is something I want to cover. But obviously with the turbo torque, you just get pushed back in your seat way more than you ever did in the GT4. They've gone for kind of the opposite strategy of what the Supra did, the new Supra that I had, the 2021. Like the turbo in that spooled up so quickly, like you could just floor the throttle for about half a second and it felt like you were on full boost. Like it was wild. Whereas this, there is a bit of a delay, but the trade-off is that this pulls like all the way to the red line. Like if we drop down to third gear now, this is fucking mental, honestly, man. I've never had a turbo car that pulls that hard right to the red line. And I know people say that phrase a lot of the time, like, oh, it pulls all the way to the red line. But in reality, a lot of the time it doesn't. Like it drops off, you know, at least 500 RPM, maybe 1,000 RPM beforehand. And like I say, in the Supra, it's quite a bit earlier. In the Supra, they've kind of optimized it for low range and mid range. This, you do sacrifice a fair bit of low range, like low RPM doesn't really do a lot, but it really makes up for it at the high end. Like it's crazy. And the mid range is still just a mad like punch. Like it's really impressive how fast this is in a straight line, I've got to say. So that's definitely a positive. The speed, just the sheer amount of torque and the amount it pushes you back in the seat and the way it pulls all the way to the red line, really good. The gear change is pretty rapid. It's the standard ZF8 gearbox that's in literally everything these days. So it changes gear really quickly. There isn't much of there's not a lot of drama on the overrun, like it doesn't really over rev or anything like that, which is a bit of a shame. Would be nice if it just kind of gave it a bit of spice, especially when you're in race mode. But yeah, it doesn't really do a lot. You don't really hear much of the downshift, which is a shame. But we'll see what happens when I make the exhaust bit. That might change that quite a bit. I did say earlier as well I was going to explain why the fact that it's automatic doesn't bother me, because normally I am a big fan of a manual, and the manual in the Cayman was the best manual I've ever driven by quite a long way. It was even better than the R8 with the gated shifter. So yeah, that was the best manual I've ever driven. So why did I want to move away from that to an automatic? Because again of where this fits in with my lineup. I hate saying that, but yeah, with the cars that I've got and that I'm planning to have, this, I figured it makes sense to be automatic. Like they don't do this in a manual. Well, apparently they do somewhere in the world, but not anywhere that's right-hand drive, I don't think. So yeah, you can't get this in a manual anyway. And I figured having an auto for a daily is absolutely fine. Like, there's no problem with that for me. It's just if you only had one car, I'd definitely want it to be manual. But if I'm planning to get another manual sports car, then that's fine. That'll fill that niche for me. So yeah, this being auto doesn't really bother me at all. It's quite nice, you know, in traffic and stuff. One thing that's not nice in traffic, and the biggest negative of this car, is the brake pedal, and just the brakes in general. It's a brake-by-wire system, which if you don't know what that means, it means that when you press a brake pedal in a normal car, the brake pedal itself actually presses on the master cylinder that then pumps fluid to the brakes, right? So it basically forces the hydraulic fluid to compress, which applies the brake pressure to your brake pads and your brake discs. Whereas in this, in a brake-by-wire system, there's no mechanical connection between the brake pedal and the master cylinder that actually pumps the fluid. There's just a sensor on the pedal that detects how far down you're pressing the pedal, and then that goes to the ECU, presumably, and then the ECU tells the electronic motor or whatever it is in the master cylinder how much to apply the brakes. Which, don't worry if you don't actually understand how it works, it's still all hydraulic fluid, by the way. It's not like it actually saves any like chance of hydraulic fluid leaking or anything like that. You've still got hydraulic fluid everywhere that you had before. It's just that now instead of the pedal making that hydraulic fluid move, it's now a wire that goes to the ECU, and then the ECU tells something else how much to make it move. Fuck knows why they decided to do that. I don't see any advantage to it, only a lot of disadvantages. The one advantage that you can get from that kind of system is that you can dynamically change how firm the brake pedal is, essentially, which I think they do in the new M3 and M4. It's like when you put it in sport mode or whatever, the brake pedal gets firmer. I don't think that happens in this. I haven't noticed any difference between the different modes. I did see someone on a forum say that it feels better in race mode. I don't agree, it feels the same in all of them to me. And unfortunately, the way it feels is bad. So what happens is, because you've not actually got any real feedback between the pedal and the brakes like you would have in the standard system, because normally as you're pressing the pedal more and it's compressing the fluid more, you get that feedback of like the stiffness of the pressure in the brake pedal. In this, that's all fake. Like there's no direct connection there, so they've got to fake the firmness of the brake pedal to try and match how much the car's slowing down and how much the brakes have been applied. I don't think they get it right at all, at least not for the initial bite. Like when I press the brake pedal, it feels like there's a really long delay before the brake pedal feels like what the car's doing, if that makes sense. So if I press the brake pedal a little bit, the brake pedal feels really stiff, as if I'm like pressing the brakes a lot, but the car's barely slowing down at all because I only pressed the brake pedal a little bit. And then I press the brake pedal a bit more, the pedal feels pretty much the same in terms of stiffness, but now the car's slowing down loads. And it just doesn't feel natural, it doesn't feel intuitive. It makes it very awkward when you just want to brake lightly, because the pedal tells you something different to what like your senses are telling you. It's really odd. I don't see why they've done it. I wish they would just change it. Everyone complains about it, and I hate it. But I am starting to get used to it a bit. Like what I found is if I just press the brake pedal a little bit and just kind of leave my foot in the same spot, even though it doesn't feel like anything's happening, after a while it does seem to start to work properly, which maybe that's the pads more than the brake-by-wire system. I am going to get some different pads for it. In fact, I've ordered them already, but they've not turned up yet. We'll do a whole video on that. But yeah, it is a shame because the rest of the car is really good, and then that just kind of lets it down a lot, because having brakes that you don't feel confident in is obviously a huge issue in a fast car, like, or in any car. But yeah, it's really like the Achilles heel of this car, because everything else is so good, but that, like within the first few days of owning it, I've had it about 2 weeks now, but within the first sort of week of owning it, I was like, I don't even know if I can keep this car. Like, if I don't start to get used to this, it's so annoying. Like, I end up hitting my head on the headrest all the time because the car's not slowing down as much as I expected to, so you kind of brace yourself a bit more than you needed to and stuff like. It's so annoying. It makes you feel like just like a beginner driver again, like lurching around all the time, especially because it's automatic, so you can't sort of feed things in with the clutch as well. So you're getting like a bit of a lurch from the torque converter, and then you get an alert from the brakes because they're not doing what you expect. It's the whole thing just felt really uncomfortable to start with. But 2 weeks in, or nearly 2 weeks in, I am getting used to it, and I think the new pads will help a lot as well. So we'll see. In my kind of long-term review in a few months, we'll see if I've got used to that. But that's definitely the only big negative at the moment. Everything else is pretty positive. So I'll try and avoid this video dragging on too much longer, but some other quick first impressions. The steering is very weird, but not weird in a bad way really like the Supra was. It's weird in the sense of you turn a little bit and it turns a lot. Like the car feels like it can pivot on like a dime. Like it's really weird for such a big car. They've obviously done some kind of trickery with the steering feedback and the alignment and whatever to make it feel like that. Because I'm sure if you really pushed it on track, and I do plan to do at least one track day just to get used to the car properly, but I feel like if you really pushed it on track, there's no way it can like turn that well because it is such a big car. But it feels like it can just do like a 90-degree turn at 100 miles an hour kind of thing. Like it feels like you go to turn and it's just super sharp, and like the feedback in the steering is a little bit weird, but I've got used to that already. Again, it's not like the Supra where even a year in I still didn't get on with the steering. This, I feel like I'm kind of used to it already, but it's definitely not super like natural feeling, but it's not bad, and that's all I can say. It feels very electronic, but it's not super light and super numb. You can tell it kind of fakes a bit of the feedback because you're going through like loading the suspension up in a tight corner, but again, it doesn't feel too unintuitive, and like you still get a bit of feedback from it, it feels like. But yeah, I think that'll probably do first impressions. Like, main takeaways, really fast. Feels like it handles really well, but I've not pushed it crazy yet. We'll see how it does on track. Infotainment system and stuff I've not really touched on. It all works. I could hook my phone up with Bluetooth straight away. Sat-nav seems to work okay. Like I say, heated seats, heated steering wheel, that's all nice. Aircon, all the normal stuff. There's a wireless charger for your phone here. There are a load of different gauges and dials and things that you can have, like boost pressure and oil pressure and stuff like that, in different modes. Annoyingly, you can't have some of them in certain modes. So like, I think race mode is the only one where it'll let you have like boost pressure on the center screen for some reason. Like, just let me pick which ones, because it lets you pick which ones you have in race mode. Like, you can turn some of them on and off. But like, just let me pick them in all the modes. Like, I don't really understand why you'd limit it to certain modes, but whatever. The other thing that's kind of a negative, you might have noticed it just then as I hit my head again on the headrest, is the throttle response. Like, the actual, obviously with the turbo there's a bit of lag, like I said before, but when you first touch the throttle, there's just like the NA engine obviously just kind of going before the turbos are doing anything. And because it's 2.9 litre, it's got a little bit of poke anyway. But it's so sharp, the throttle response, even in like the normal mode, but in like dynamic and race mode, you've got to move your foot like a millimetre and it like surges the car forward. Like, it's so overly sensitive. I did ask a mapping company if they can like map that out when they tune the car, when I do decat downpipes and stuff like that. They said not, which seems really odd to me. So I might speak to another company and see if they can. But yeah, the pedal I would say is way too sensitive. I know why they do it, to try and make it feel fast and responsive, but it's just annoying to me because, yeah, you're not actually picking up much speed, you're just getting like an initial lurch and then you've got to wait for the turbo to kick in anyway. So yeah, it's another one of those things that a lot of companies do. You know, you put it in sport mode and then the throttle gets super sensitive to try and make it feel fast, but in reality it's not any faster, it's just annoying. So yeah, that's a minor gripe, but I'm getting used to it again. There's a lot of stuff. That is the thing. People say this car's got a lot more character than the equivalents from like the M4 and stuff, and I definitely agree with that. Some of those things are negatives, although the whole throttle thing, like I say, most car companies do that now. But yeah, it's definitely got more character than any of the German stuff that I've driven. Just a lot of random little things are just different and interesting. That's the best way I can describe it. This car is way more interesting than an M3 or an M4 in my experience. Like, the M4 that I had was perfectly fine. I didn't dislike it, but it was never exciting, it was never interesting, it just kind of got on with it and did the job. This, in terms of everything from the power delivery to the way everything works, it's just more interesting, there's more character. And yeah, it definitely sounds a lot better than an M4 as well. I don't know about the new generation, but the S55, like F82 M4 that I had, sounded like shit, even with an Akrapovic, like catback system or whatever it was. I don't know, I can't remember. I've been like mid-pipe back. But yeah, that sounded trash. So yeah, this does sound a lot better, but we'll see what it's like with the exhaust bits on. And yeah, that'll probably do for this video, because like I said, it's supposed to be short and sweet, and it's probably been like half an hour long at least now. But yeah, we'll do another video soon. Just so fast. Do another video soon, looking at the underneath of the car and things I'm going to modify, and also trying to do burnouts in it. And you'll see I said trying to do burnouts. That might give you a slight hint. We managed to do it eventually, but it took some fiddling. So yeah, I'll do those videos soon, and yeah, I'll see you there.